This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on G20 Foreign Ministers Meet. The participants are Ashok Malik, former policy advisor, Minister of External Affairs, and Omvesh Upadhyay, AIR correspondent.
The G20 Foreign Ministers meeting is taking place from 1st and 2nd March in New Delhi under India's presidency. Representatives of 40 countries, including non-G20 members, multilateral organizations are invited by India. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna, and Chinese Foreign Minister Yin Yang will also participate in the meeting. In a press briefing today, Foreign Secretary Vinay Mohan Kwatra said that the meeting of G20 foreign ministers will formally begin with a dinner tonight, and this will be the biggest meeting of foreign ministers of G20 countries. The G20 foreign ministers meeting is taking place days after a gathering of finance ministers and the central bank governors of the G20 member countries in Bangalore. During the two-day event, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and several dignitaries are scheduled to discuss ways to deal with falling economic growth, increasing inflation, lower demands for goods and services, as well as increasing prices of foods, fuels and fertilizers. To discuss on this in detail, we are joined by Ashok Malik, former policy advisor, Ministry of External Affairs. Welcome to the program, Mr. Malik.
Thank you.
Mr. Malik, to begin the discussion, I would like to know what significance the G20 foreign ministers meeting hold under India's presidency.
G20 was born in 2008 following the global financial crisis as a gathering of the 20 biggest economies on the planet. In that sense, the first G20 presidency under India and the meeting of the G20 foreign ministers in India is the biggest such gathering in India's diplomatic history. There have been moments in the past and more than 20 foreign ministers have been in India, certainly, but foreign ministers of 20 most powerful economies of the world representing such an important share of global GDP to be at any one given time is certainly a big event. It is perhaps the biggest such gathering in that sense in India.
So, if I'm not wrong, there's one theme in the foreign ministers meeting is that strengthening multilateralism and the need for reforms. Mr. Malik, I want to understand from you how firmly India could lead the nations to find a possible ground and solution in this.
Look, I don't think you'll find a solution immediately at this meeting itself, but obviously the world has to work towards it. The multilateral order, the multilateral institutions that have governed us for so many years were born after Second World War in 1945, the UN system, and got a certain fillip in 1990 after the Cold War with the creation of institutions such as the World Trade Organization and more recently G20 itself. It has been found in recent times that many of these institutions are perhaps past their sell-by date and need to be upgraded. They need to be upgraded in terms of membership. The UN Security Council has 5 permanent members. 4 of them are from the West. 3 of them are from the West. 3 of them are from Europe. Only 1 is from Asia. A country like India doesn't qualify. There's no African representative. So certainly the membership of these agencies and these bodies needs to be upgraded. Second, even thematically, in terms of issues they tackle, these institutions have been found wanting. The UN Security Council is meant to debate and concern itself with issues related to global security. It seems to define security in terms of traditional warfare, invasion, missiles, bombs, guns, and bullets. In 2020, when the COVID crisis hit the entire planet, and there's certainly a huge security risk, an economic, humanitarian, and even political security risk, the UN Security Council did not deem it fit to discuss the COVID crisis because it could not agree that this was a security challenge. And its definition of security was ossified, it was frozen in time. So obviously, both in terms of membership and thematically, the multilateral system needs to be upgraded and reformed. And this is a demand India has been making for some time. Everybody agrees that the multilateral system needs to be reformed and upgraded, but nobody is clear on how this should be done. There's no consensus.
And here I would like to mention what Foreign Secretary Vinay Kwatra said in the press briefing before the meeting today. He said that given the developing situation of Russia and Ukraine, naturally it will be an important point of discussion during foreign ministers meeting. By focusing on the Russia-Ukraine situation, it will be important to know what they come out with and what understanding is developed. I want to know what's your take on this, Mr. Malik.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which in the words of the Prime Minister is regrettable because this is certainly not a time for war. has shaken the international system. It is the first land war in Europe in perhaps 70 years, and it has become a proxy war between the US and the West on one side and Russia on the other, even though the actual fighting has been done by Ukrainians and Russians. It has also led to huge economic consequences. It has restricted energy supply chains, whether it is crude oil or whether it is food grains and fertilizers. There is a shortage across the world. Prices have shot up, inflation is very high. Such a situation, countries are looking at the Ukraine crisis from the different vantage positions. Obviously, the countries of the West see this as an invasion of a sovereign country by Russia and want to prioritize that aspect of Russia's behavior, while countries of the global South, while not defending Russia's invasion and recognizing that what Russia did was a breach of peace and sovereignty, countries of the global South, including India, would also like an equal focus and equal prioritization on the economic consequences of this war and of the sanctions, including oil prices and more broadly energy prices, as well as food inflation. Yeah, so these are the two sort of different approaches on which there will be debate and discussion at the G20 meeting. Whether it leads to a consensus or not is difficult to say. The hope is always there.
Mr. Malik, you mentioned about the disruption of supply chain during the Russia-Ukraine war. How do you think G20 nations will address the issue? Plus, how India could play a bigger role in this to develop and establish a cooperation for development among the countries?
I think India would like greater sensitivity vis-a-vis countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America especially, who have been affected by the economic consequences of the war. Some of these countries are already reeling under economic pressures due to the pandemic, due to a debt crisis caused by infrastructure spending, including Chinese infrastructure projects. So on top of that, there has now been problem of food inflation and energy inflation. So India would certainly like a focus on this issue. If you remember, before the G20 meeting, India called a virtual meeting of global South countries to take their message to the G20. India sees itself as a bridge between the global South and the G20. And it would certainly like G20 to contribute to the well-being of the global South nations as well. And that would certainly be India's approach in this meeting.
And Mr. Malik, counter-terrorism steps have become a major concern for the G20 nations. So how are they planning to tackle these new and emerging threats? Plus, what is likely to be discussed about this in foreign ministers' meeting?
Terrorism in our part of the world has certainly become even more of a challenge after August 2021, when there was a regime change in Kabul and the Taliban took over. Because Afghanistan has now become a sanctuary for a whole range of bad actors who had earlier been subdued. That apart, in a time of such economic flux, terror financing, sources of terror financing, including through the opium trade, the drug trade, new technologies such as cryptocurrency, have all got a significant boost. So these are certainly issues on which India would like to focus attention, as it has in the recent past, on the sources that sustain terrorism, both politically or financially, and hope for a consensual approach from the world to address this.
And as we know that G20 is an intergovernmental forum of world's major developed and developing economies and industry thrive on skilled and talented human resources. So, is there any plan of global skill mapping and talent pool in the foreign ministers meeting, Mr. Malik?
Well, I don't think detailed plan can be worked out at this meeting, but there will be a broad conversation, I understand, because as global supply chains are being reordered and redistributed, there will also be a need for the skill map of the world to be redrawn, because where supply chains go, skills will also be needed. That apart, you are dealing with a strange demography today where developing countries such as India and other countries in Asia still have a relatively young population, while developed countries in the West especially have a much older population. So there are specific gaps that are emerging in specific countries. I will give you one example. If you look at Japan, which has an aging population, there is a great demand there for healthcare workers, nurses, medical workers, and so on. India has signed a bilateral agreement with Japan to train health workers, nurses, and medical personnel in India, specifically for deployment as workers in this area in Japan. So they are being taught and given courses in a manner that equips them to start working in Japan from the day they land there, and also being taught the Japanese language. So this is just one example. There can be numerous such examples for both India and for other countries, other developing countries across the world. And I think India would like to share these examples and ideas at the G20 meeting.
And to add on the discussion, I would like to say that what we have witnessed the earthquake disaster in Turkey and Syria. But how an urgent relief response by different countries help to lower the human loss? Is there any discussion on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in the meeting too, and how badly we need this?
No, I think the tragedy in Turkey, which was there for all to see, also very heartwarming that it brought together so many countries. I think almost 100 countries sent assistance, including India. And this is not new, to be honest. When India experienced its Delta wave, many countries helped us with oxygen equipment, including Turkey, it must be said. So Prime Minister Modi and India have developed a certain expertise in HADR, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, including with the setting up of the Coalition for Disaster Infrastructure. So, for example, the war in Yemen led to Operation Rahat and to India rescuing its own citizens in 2015, I think. Didn't just rescue its own citizens, India rescued citizens from 50 other countries. I think it was 50 other countries. And similarly, when the Ukraine crisis happened, India had to pull out 20,000 of its own students who were stuck there. When there was a flood in Mozambique a few years ago, India sent assistance. When there was a huge fire in Mauritius, India and France came together to help. So there have been numerous examples of HADR where India has used incremental capacity to help other countries. And Prime Minister Modi has been keen to institutionalize this at the global level. Bilateral partners, multilateral partners. And this is certainly an aspect of Indian foreign policy which we can discuss at the G20 meeting.
And amid the various issues, how India will ensure that important concerns like climate change and third world debt get due in the G20 foreign ministers meeting?
I don't know the details of the meeting, but I'm sure this is both to discuss because global debt, especially debt from both Western multilateral agencies, Western countries, multilateral agencies, and more increasingly from unsustainable Chinese infrastructure projects, have become a political risk and have destabilized polities even in our near neighborhoods, such as Sri Lanka last year, Nepal, Bangladesh. And India is concerned about this and would like a more prudent approach towards debt restructuring and towards more sustainable infrastructure projects which don't place an unnecessary burden on future generations. As for climate change, two issues stand out. One, finance for climate change. While technology is becoming available, finance is not quite available. Second, quite frankly, as a result of the energy crisis following the Ukraine war, many countries have gone back to using even more coal. So the paradox is, while the summer of 2021 and the extreme weather events of 2021 or 2022 and 23 have shown us that climate change is a clear and present danger. So the world not cognizant of that urgency. In fact, we have seen an increase in the use of fossil fuels by even developed countries. So that is certainly something India would want to discuss.
And with your insightful inputs, we can conclude this session. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on emerging global challenges and international matters. Thank you so much, Mr. Malik.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on G20 Foreign Ministers Meet. The participants were Ashok Malik, former policy advisor, Minister of External Affairs, and Omvesh Upadhyay, AIR correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on a YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.